I am a well of useless information. Did you know that 2023 started with a Fibonacci date and ended with 123, 123? That's pretty cool! Okay, I can tell I'm boring you. Let's move on. 2023 is behind us now, and it was certainly a year of highs and lows. Despite some less than great things happening in the world, the games that released this year were truly exceptional in one way or another. A lot of people claimed it was one of the best years for gaming, and I have to agree. And of course, that gave me no shortage of games to talk about today. I played 24 games, both new and old, and now I'm here to talk about my 15 favorites. Just like last year, the only rule is that I must have played and beaten the game in 2023. So with all that said, it's recap time. Let's roll! My brother and I got a PS5 at long last near the end of 2022, so I really got the chance to put it through its paces in 2023. It's a fantastic console that plays games buttery smooth, but I'm not here to talk about the console itself. Installed on every PS5 is a special little game, Astros Playroom. At its core, this is more or less just a tech demo showing off the new Sony DualSense controller. But man, they put so much love and care into this little game that it's truly special. Sure, it's not much more than a basic 3D collectathon platformer, but that's just fine because of all the nuance at play here. This was made to show off all the features of the DualSense controller, like how the triggers can generate haptic feedback and resistance for better immersion, or how there's some neat gyro control, or how the touchpad is really not good for rolling ball segments. Yeah, they kind of fumbled that last part admittedly. These little demonstrations do an excellent job with not only showing off what this controller can do, but also validating its new features. At the same time though, this game is a love letter to all fans of Sony. Each of the 4 main levels has artifacts to collect, and they're all stuff from PlayStation's past. So you not only get a fun game, but also a history lesson. There's not a ton of depth with Astros Playroom, but between the charm and how well it uses everything in the controller, it's a great showcase with just the kind of console that PS5 is. Late in 2022, I had to make the difficult choice between buying Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope or Bayonetta 3. They're both games I was super looking forward to, but obviously Sparks of Hope won out in the end. However, near the start of 2023, I finally grabbed Bayonetta 3. When it comes to Platinum games, I always go in with super high expectations. I've done plenty of gushing for their games over the years on this channel, and this game is good. But unfortunately not much more than that. Okay, let's sidetrack before I sour the mood. Controlling Bayonetta herself feels utterly fantastic. The combat is silky smooth, the lineup of weapons is absolutely sublime, and the boss fights are highlights like they always are. There's a brand new gimmick where Bayonetta can actually summon and control demons outside of cutscenes. In concept, this is really cool. In practice, however, it's kinda clunky. Bayonetta is left completely defenseless while it's active, and the attacks from the giant monsters are pretty slow. I found this mechanic to be better used when it's used solely as a combo finisher instead of as another avenue for the combat as a whole. Being able to summon the mech suit with the clock tower is awesome though. And you also get to control more than just Bayonetta, you also get to control the bestie Jean in 2D pseudo-stealth segments. These aren't horrible or anything, but they just feel so out of place in a game like this. And then there's a newcomer, Viola. Her playstyle is actually fairly reminiscent of Raiden, actually. She has a lot more natural agility and uses a sword for attack. Her combo game feels fantastic, but there's a critical flaw. She has no dodge maneuver. Instead, to activate Witch Time, you must parry and attack. But the timing to get it for longer than a second is so strict that it barely feels impactful at all. Honestly, this is probably my least favorite of the trilogy, but that doesn't mean it's not worth playing. It's still Bayonetta at the end of the day, and that's always a good time. In 2023, I began my journey streaming on Twitch. It's been a ton of fun, and if you haven't dropped by yet, maybe consider swinging by if you get the chance. Anyways, to those of you who have been watching my streams, you would have seen me play through a peculiar indie game for the first time, a quirky little title called Bunk Snacks. This game is honestly unlike anything I've ever played, but in essence, imagine Pokemon Snap, but you're on foot, and you're also capturing the things you're taking pictures of, and all the characters look like Muppets. See what I mean? Nothing really like it. Your character goes on an adventure to Snacktooth Island to check out the mysterious Bug Snacks. And once there, after nearly dying, you meet up with Philbo and help him bring everyone back to town. And how do you do that? Well, you catalog and capture the Bug Snacks to do quests for everyone so that they return. What really brings the whole thing together though is the charm of it all. All the characters have their own little traits and quirks that help them stand out from the others. So even though most of the quests boil down to catching a specific snack, it still manages to stay fresh. Helping that is the fact that the Bunk Snacks themselves are the most adorable little monstrosities I've ever seen. Simply putting foods together with googly eyes makes for incredibly adorable and creative monster designs. And there's a lot more to do besides bringing everyone back. There are a ton of side quests that allow you to learn not just more about these characters, but also the world around you, which is so neat! If you're looking for a fun and unique game to satiate that hunger, this right here will fill you right up. Do you guys ever have that game or series that you've known for a super long time and you have that friend or two that loves it and tells you over and over to play it but you never do, but then once you do, you wonder why you didn't before? Don't lie, it's happened at least once, and for me, that game is XCOM. After I fell in love with Mario & Rabbids, a few friends of mine urged me to give XCOM a shot, as it's one of the most iconic tactical games ever. It took me a good while to get around to it, but I'm glad I eventually did. Since I was so familiar with Sparks of Hope, I was able to jump into this game with basically no issues, and they're fairly similar to one another. You have large maps with enemies to gun down, you gotta make sure you stay behind cover for the best defense, there are a bunch of different classes that offer different pros and cons, and a variety of weapons to use. What makes Enemy Unknown stand out comes down to your base. Between operations and battles, you return to your base and get upgraded with a few new facilities to add perks to your squad or new features. You can conduct studies on various aliens, both alive and dead, develop new weapons and gear, give allies new skills, and so much more. This is honestly half the game right here, as it's very important to build your base right while also keeping a steady revenue. It's paramount to help countries in distress, as well as saving civilians, so you can always up your base with new options or buy new weapons to keep up. It can also be a bit overwhelming at points, but when the gears start turning and everything is right, it is so satisfying. And seeing the tangible benefits on the battlefield adds to it. Getting new weapons and abilities to give you a major leg up feels so rewarding. Whether you're new to the genre or a hardened veteran, you'll find exactly what you need in XCOM. I'm glad I have so many friends with a lot of different interests because I'm always getting new recommendations for things to check out. Even though PlayStation Plus is kind of overpriced, especially now, I think there are enough perks to warrant it. Not least of all being a huge library of free games to download. One such game came recommended by my friend Triforce of Doom, 13 Sentinels Eisrim. This is honestly a pretty interesting game to talk about as it's essentially two games in one. On one side, you have a narratively driven adventure with a sort of similar feel to a visual novel, and on the other is a real-time strategy game with fast and frenetic battles. Despite how different the two styles are, they work really well in tandem. Each of the 13 protagonists has their own traits as well as their own part in the larger story. As you explore each of their tales and interact with the rest of the cast as well as the side characters, you get a ton of insight not just into the characters themselves, but also the world around them, and it's really cool to see. Those story sequences make for a really nice change of pace from the adrenaline-filled battle sequences. Once you dive into those, the characters suit up into giant robots called Sentinels to destroy kaiju. The battles themselves are super thrilling, but you can't just rush out there and expect to win. The 13 Sentinels are split into 4 categories, each with their own specialties, and you can customize each character's moves to your liking. It becomes this huge thought process of who should take what role and what characters work well together. However, for how fun both styles are, there are times where the flow of the game is kinda disjointed. Since there are 13 different points of view for the story and certain story sequences are locked behind prerequisites, there are definitely points where it feels like the pacing comes to a screeching halt. That's not to discredit the game completely, however, as it's still an enjoyable romp that I can easily recommend. A big reason I wanted to get a PS5 for so long is because of one game. It was a launch title for the console, and a part of easily my favorite Sony franchise. And you know the name as well as I do. I'm talking about Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. A new Ratchet & Clank game was just the kind of thing that was needed to sell me on the new PlayStation, and the time finally came for me to play it last year. Everything I love and admire about this series is all here and accounted for. The dialogue is as witty and hilarious as I know and love, the area design is absolutely top-notch, the weapons are all varied and a ton of fun to use, and there's not just one Dr. Nefarious, there's 2! All the more reason to love the bad guys. On that topic though, that plays into the story of this game. After Nefarious majorly screws up with a rift generator, Ratchet and Clank are separated across dimensions. Fortunately, Clank meets up with another Lombax named Rivet, and she helps him out however she can. While Ratchet is looking to reunite with his best friend, Rivet is looking to overthrow the tyrannical rule of her dimension's Nefarious. You jump back and forth between Ratchet and Rivet a lot, but unlike 13 Sentinels, it feels just right. Both characters get the time they need without overstaying their welcome, which is perfect. Now the question arises, is this my favorite in this series? No. Personally, I like A Crack in Time just a little bit more, but dang if Rift Apart didn't come close. Who knows what the future holds for this series, but I hope we get more unforgettable experiences like this one. One aspect of modern gaming that's been heavily debated over the years is the idea of remakes. I'll freely admit, there are a lot of cases where it isn't warranted. But at the same time, when a remake is done well, people immediately take notice. And 2023 gave us one stellar remake. In that Nintendo Direct, we all thought that Super Mario RPG was simply coming to NSO and nothing else. But when the sparkles came and the trailer transformed, jaws dropped across the world. Super Mario RPG was getting a full remake from the ground up, and that got me super excited. Mario RPG was always a fun game to me, but it was definitely starting to show its age in many places. This remake took what worked from that classic and added a ton of small things that really enhanced the experience. There are simple quality of life improvements, like better control with an analog stick and the ability to return to the world map from the menu. That especially is an addition I adore. But more importantly, they improved the combat system quite a bit. At its core, it's still the same with time hits and action commands for the specials. But two things were added for the better. For one, if you land the timing of a standard attack perfectly, you'll get an AoE on the other enemies. This not only incentivizes learning the timing, but also makes standard battles go faster, which is great for the overall pace. There's also the matter of the new team gauge. As you nail offensive and defensive commands, the gauge fills, and when it's maxed out, you can utilize a team attack. And the effects will vary depending on your team composition, such as a massive elemental shower, a concentrated attack on one enemy, or even a full party heal. That right there is the best one. And can I just say, they did not need to go this hard on the presentation, but I am so glad that they did. The entire cast gives us so much personality throughout, and the remix soundtrack is a treat to my ears. This is the kind of remake people want to see. And now there's a remake of Thousand Year Door on the way? We really are living in the best timeline. I've made it no secret that Persona is one of my favorite franchises, but for the longest time, the only mainline games I played were 4 and 5. Persona 3 was always that one game that eluded me. I never owned a PSP or a PS2, so I was never able to finally complete the so-called Persona trilogy. But leave it to Atlus to give me exactly what I needed by re-releasing Persona 3, 4, and 5 on modern consoles. So yeah, let's talk about Persona 3 Portable. This game has personas and shadows like the other two, but integrates them in a very different way. When the clock strikes midnight, normal people become coffins, and Tartarus rises as the dark hour begins. The shadows come out to play, and the Persona wielders are the only ones that can keep them at bay. My awful attempt at poetry aside, it's honestly a pretty interesting setup. The end goal of the game doesn't change a whole lot, as you're simply trying to understand just what Tartarus is, but the story evolves naturally, especially as you meet new characters. This was the first game to feature the iconic social link system that allows you to learn more about your allies. On that topic, each Persona game has an overarching theme to it. Persona 4 is about conquering your inner demons and desires, now repressing them only makes it worse, while Persona 5 is about rebelling against conformity and seizing your own destiny. Persona 3, meanwhile, has its themes around death, and thinking about how to best utilize the time you have in this world. It makes for an overall pretty dark story, but also the kind of story that really makes you think. Of course, the game has both life sim segments with social links and dungeon crawling segments. The social links are as enjoyable as they always were, and learning more about your allies as well as the other people you meet is super enriching. And when night falls, it's time to explore Tartarus. Like Persona 4, the layouts for each floor are random, so you never know what to expect. Unfortunately, while Tartarus makes for a nice setting, it's the only thing you get to explore. Areas tend to look samey, and it does get old after a while. The battles will pick up the slack though, being the thrilling turn-based fights I know and love. While this is easily my least favorite of the trilogy, it's still a fantastic game. And heck, there's a remake now that can easily improve on this game like with Mario RPG. Perhaps when the clock strikes 12, you'll be the one fighting the darkness. It's a well-established fact that the Metroidvania genre, or search action if you prefer, is one of the absolute best genres for indie games. Hey, don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger. Alright, look at that, a proper segue. This is another game Triforce recommended to me. The pixel aesthetic immediately caught my attention, and it seemed to be a Ninja Gaiden style platformer. That intrigued me, as I hadn't seen an indie developer take that approach yet. However, after a few hours, and when it seemed like I had reached the end, everything got flipped on its head. Suddenly, this Ninja Gaiden style platformer turned into a Ninja Gaiden style Metroidvania. I don't know who came up with this idea, but this is absolutely genius! You have all the grace and agility of a ninja in wide open areas that encourage you to explore, and it's executed so well! Naturally, you learn new abilities such as a glide and a wall climb, and they all feel in line for what a ninja would do. Exploring all these maps looking for the MacGuffins is such a great time, and that's before mentioning the best part. After the beginning part of the game, you time travel, and this is reflected in the change from 8-bit aesthetic to 16-bit, which is such a clever way to convey the change. And when you're freely exploring, there are portals that let you travel to the future or past, which also affect the world around you. And the icing on the cake is the writing. It was made without a single care for the fourth wall, and had me chuckling the whole time. This is one of the most creative Metroidvanias I've ever played, and I'm glad to get that message out there. When it comes to goofy, stupid Nintendo fun, my mind immediately jumps to WarioWare. This series is all about incredibly short microgames where most of the challenge is just figuring out what the heck to do. Smooth Moves did an excellent job showcasing how the Weare remote could be used well for this kind of game. And now 17 years later, we have a new game showing off how the Joy-Cons can do the same. And I gotta say, I like to move it, move it! Right when this game was announced, I was immediately super hyped for it. The concept is absolutely brilliant. Just like how Smooth Moves has you hold the Weare remote in multiple different ways to do different microgames, Move It has several different forms you assume with the Joy-Cons. But if you ask me, it's actually executed better here. Since you have 2 Joy-Cons instead of 1, there's a lot more versatility involved, and certain actions feel a lot smoother. What's also really cool is the microgames do things like have you use the buttons on the Joy-Cons, or lay them on the floor for some really clever actions. The single player itself is already really fun, but the multiplayer takes things up to a whole new level. You have a simple last man standing mode, as well as listening to the Doctor, which leads to so many laughs throughout. But my favorite is easily Galactic Conquest. This mode is all about making it through a board, but the kicker is whoever reaches the end doesn't necessarily win. This means even if you don't always take first in the microgames, you can still come out on top. When playing multiplayer, you and your friends will look like absolute buffoons, but it might be some of the most fun you have had on Switch. This is without a doubt one of the best party games you can buy for this console, and if you don't have it yet, you better move it so you do. Now we come to the top 5. This was easily the hardest part when making this video. These 5 games were all absolutely phenomenal, and the trickiest part was just figuring out which one is my least favorite. But after much deliberating, I finally decided on an order. So for my number 5 spot, let's talk about Pikmin 4. The long-awaited 4th game in the series, hinted as early as 2015, is finally here. It was a decade after Pikmin 3, but man, it was absolutely worth the wait. The structure is actually very different from other Pikmin games. You actually get to set up your own Explorer avatar, and you're part of a rescue corps. Your team receives a distress signal and goes to save whoever is in danger. Naturally though, your ship crashes when entering the planet. Fortunately though, you're not alone at the start. You have the help of the goodest boy, Ochi. And after your tutorial area, you're off to explore the planet with the help of the Pikmin. Your main goal is to rescue your team and others that are stranded, but you also need to collect treasure to power up your ship. The areas you explore are absolutely massive, and you can tackle tasks in any way you want. It's pretty much like having an open-world Pikmin game, with more areas and new parts of areas becoming available as you find more Pikmin, collect raw materials, and collect treasures. But returning for Pikmin 2 are the caves. Unlike that game, they're not randomly generated, and time doesn't completely stand still, rather it slows greatly. In these caves, you actually discover a new type of Pikmin in Ice Pikmin. They can freeze water and enemies and are overall a fantastic addition. Furthermore, certain caves lead to these special Dandori challenges that really put your multitasking skills to the test. But then there's the matter of the night missions. Previously, staying on the planet's surface after dark was a big no-no, but now it's a new set of missions. With the help of a bizarrely adorable Glow Pikmin, you have to protect the hills from the very aggressive enemies approaching. Doing so nets you Glow Sap, which can be used to save leafy explorers. As a big fan of this series, this is basically the perfect Pikmin game. The adventure is long and fulfilling, the different challenges are all handled so well, and did I mention that Ochi is the goodest boy ever? Go out and explore this planet, and you're guaranteed to have a great time. Recently, I've been on a huge kick with tactical games. Kingdom Battle was my gateway into the genre, and later Sparks of Hope at XCOM really solidified my appreciation for it. So you can probably imagine how I felt when during a Nintendo Direct, a Persona 5 tactical game was unveiled, and it was aptly named Persona 5 Tactica. Real creative, I know. The crew is just chilling out on the block when all of a sudden they're pulled into the metaverse, and without being given any time to figure out what just happened, they suddenly see trouble and go to stop it. After most of the party is brainwashed by a new villain, a new face named Irina shows up and brings Joker and Morgana into her rebel corps. From there, it's a matter of rescuing your teammates and thwarting this new egotistical maniac. And then the next area appears. Yeah, what looks like an 8-hour adventure is much more than that, but that's all I'll say on the matter. When it comes to gameplay, it's a tactical game through and through. Like XCOM, it's important to maintain your cover and hit enemies fast and hard. Impressively, however, they managed to implement persona mechanics into this kind of game quite seamlessly. When you hit an enemy that isn't behind cover or suffering from a status condition, they get knocked down, and that character can take another action. You can use this to move and attack again, or set up for this game's all-out attack, which is incredibly satisfying to pull off on a large group. And then there's the personas themselves, but they're handled quite differently here. Everyone has their standard personas from the source game, but you can still earn more from battles and fuse them together to make new ones. These personas can be equipped as sub-personas, and they grant a boost to stats as well as additional skills and attacks. This is such a genius system that falls in line with the series. And there's more than just standard battles, there are also quests to complete. These often take the form of elaborate puzzles, as it's less about killing everything and more about figuring out just how to do so. I already went into this game with super high expectations, but it went and surpassed them in the flashiest way possible. As you can no doubt tell, 2023 gave us so many amazing games to play that it can honestly be pretty hard to keep track of them all. But despite that, there are games that people are just incredibly passionate about, and if you're a fan of a certain fabulous wolf succubus artist, then this game needs absolutely no introduction. Wing, this one's for you. I absolutely adore Hi-Fi Rush! This Bethesda game came the heck out of nowhere at the start of the year, and people immediately fell in love. It took me quite a bit to finally get around to it, but I'm so glad that I finally did. This game centers around Chai, a dude with a bad arm who dreams of becoming a rock star. So he joins Project Armstrong to get a new cybernetic arm. But a minor incident causes his music player to also be a part of it, and this causes him to become a defect. And after beating away robots with a makeshift guitar, he meets up with this girl named Peppermint, who knows something sinister is going on behind the scenes of the project and enlists Chai to help. And that's the basic story, but it works so well. A big reason for that is the characters you get to see. Chai is an absolute dork, and I love him. At the start, he goes along because he's basically dragged into the whole thing, but over time, he matures and develops, and it's so great to see. Peppermint starts off as pretty cold and doesn't think Chai is up for this, but she eventually comes around. And other allies and enemies you meet along the way all stand out in their own way. As a side, did anyone else think Xanto was gonna pull out a stand at some point, or is that just me? Well, that's enough gushing over the cast. How does the gameplay look? It's honestly quite the unique beast, and the easiest way to describe it is a game like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta mixed with a rhythm game. Chai has a light attack and a heavy attack, and you have to nail attacks to the beat of whatever song is playing. As you do this, your combo meter rises and you score higher and higher. And this also plays into defense as well, as enemies have specific tells and always attack on the beat. This combat system by itself is already really fun, and mastering it feels incredibly rewarding. And between battles, you can explore these levels to find secrets and treasures, or just to gawk at the beautiful presentation. This game has a phenomenal art style, and the simple fact that background elements also move to the beat is such a brilliant touch. And this kinda goes without saying, but the soundtrack is just amazing. The fact that there's a second soundtrack option for YouTubers and streamers really goes to show how much they cared about this game. This game just plain rocks, that's all I can say. At the Switch's launch, Breath of the Wild left us all absolutely speechless. This game simultaneously took the series back to its roots and also brought it forward in the most amazing way possible. And when it was revealed that a sequel was in the works, the internet collectively lost their minds. And when that game dropped, nobody could ever shut up about it. And now I shall continue that trend. Tears of the Kingdom is one of the absolute greatest games I have ever played. Mechanically speaking, it is very similar to Breath of the Wild. The same inventory system with all different kinds of weapons, shields, and bows, as well as gathering materials to cook with. But this game adds so much and refines it all to a ludicrous degree. First off, there's not one, not two, but 3 massive areas to explore. On the ground, it's what you expect. Hills and valleys, shrines to discover, and all manners of side quests to do. This feels very similar to the previous game, and that is in no way a bad thing. But when you take to the sky, everything changes. There are a ton of islands to explore with all kinds of different challenges, and even their own shrines to discover. It is great fun, but when you take the plunge to the depths, you better be ready. Everything is dark, the dangerous gloom is all around you, it eats at your health, and the only remotely safe spots are the light routes. It is quite the different type of area, but braving it and coming out alive gives me some of the greatest rushes ever. But of course, you have a whole new set of abilities to help you explore. With the help of your new arm, you have a variety of runes to use. You can ascend to make vertical travel so much fun, you can basically rewind objects for some truly cool effects, and you can pick up objects. That last one is paramount though, as with a cleverly named Ultra Hand, you can not only freely move objects, but also stick them together. This one mechanic right here is what makes this game what it is. The only things limiting you are the resources around you and your imagination. Why ride a horse when you can simply make a car, or make a hoverbike to explore the skies? What's also really cool is you can attach objects to your gear. You can attach monster parts, mechanisms, you can even attach a bomb to a sword! Don't do that! That's dangerous! Throughout the entire game, there is no right way to do anything. With the tools at your disposal, you're free to make your adventure all your own. But no matter what, I think we can all agree that this game is nearly perfect, and it would take something special to top this. If you've been keeping track, you might have noticed that a certain big release of 2023 is yet to appear. And it's not because I didn't play it, oh no! I made sure to get this game on launch day because I knew it'd be amazing. No, scratch that. It'd be wonderful. And yeah, it truly was. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is my #1 choice. Oh man, when the trailers first dropped, I was simply taken aback. I always enjoyed the new Super Mario Bros. Series. A lot of people call them soulless, but they're still fun games. Wonder, meanwhile, is more than just a fun game. It was the revitalization the Super Mario platformer series has needed for such a long time. Going through these levels on their own, you're treated to not just absolutely fantastic level design, but also so much charm and personality throughout. From small things like sleeping enemies that don't hurt you, to entirely new mechanics like dash panels, it is such a treat. And that's just the levels on their own, because once you reach the Wonder Flower... oh man. Every level has one of these, and they change the gameplay to the nth level. From simple things like bringing props to life or a Piranha Plant concert, yes, this is a thing, to even wilder effects like running on the walls or becoming an enemy. They're always a highlight of whatever level they're in. And being a Mario game, there are fun power-ups throughout. There's a tried and true Fire Flower, but also 3 new power-ups. First is the Elephant Apple, which turns your character into, well, an elephant. And with this new form, you can use your trunk to attack or spit water. It's a really fun power-up, and it puts to fantastic use. Then there's the Bubble Flower. It shoots bubbles that can absorb enemies, but with a little creativity, it can also be used to make platforms. And then there's my personal favorite, the Drill Mushroom. This gives your character a drill helmet that is totally indestructible and allows you to drill into the ground or ceiling. This leads to fun ways to deal with enemies, as well as truly inventive level design and means to hide secrets. What's also really cool is the badge system. You can equip any one for a level, and there's a variety of badges that give you additional moves, a special boost to make levels easier, or drastically affects how you play. The spinning jump is the best one though. I will die on that hill. And one of the best parts of the game is the community aspect. There isn't a true online co-op system, but as you play, you'll see other people playing with you, and you can help each other out by reviving one another or placing standees to help signify something. And if you don't want to do that, you can always raise your friends through these levels, which is just a blast. Everything this game does, it absolutely nails. This makes Super Mario Wonder not only my favorite game of 2023, but one of my new favorite video games, hands down. I'm Arrow Dragon, and I'm hoping 2024 is another great year for gaming. And that's a wrap for my first countdown of 2024, and I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm sorry I couldn't get this done sooner, but between work getting hectic and being sick for a bit, I was delayed. As for what I got planned next, I feel the time is right to talk about my favorite Gen 9 Pokemon, so look forward to that. Also remember to check out my Twitch channel, where I livestream a few times a week. Well, until next time, this is Arrow Dragon, signing off.